If you live anywhere in Western Canada right now, you probably don't need me to tell you how bad this wildfire season has been. I'm in Alberta, and just this past weekend, the wildfire smoke was brutal. And next door, in British Columbia, thousands of people are being forced to evacuate from their homes. The National Wildland Fire Summary shows that as of this morning, there are 602 active wildfires in Canada. This season has burned over 4 million hectares of forest. Hi, I'm Sarah, and this is part one of a new series where I'm digging into all the federal public science cuts happening across Canada. I want to know what exactly is being cut, what those public servants actually do, and most importantly, what those cuts could mean for you. Because when we hear the department is losing hundreds of jobs or millions of dollars, those numbers can feel really abstract. But those jobs often support things that we depend on every single day. And in this case, I'm here to talk to you about something that's happening behind the scenes of Canada's wildfire response. The federal government is cutting parts of Canada's emergency management systems at a time that we're asking the system to respond to increasingly severe disasters. So, what's exactly happening here? Let's dive in. So, Public Safety Canada is the federal department responsible for coordinating Canada's response when an emergency becomes too big for one community or province to manage alone. This year, it's being asked to cut about $15 million. And by 2028, they're being asked to cut more than $30 million per year. And one of the things that the government mentions as a cost saving measure is something called reorienting internal emergency management functions. This is basically the infrastructure behind things like coordinating federal resources or working with the provinces, sharing information, preparing for disasters, and then mobilizing a national response when the local capacity is overwhelmed. And here's where things get interesting. Public safety themselves acknowledges that they're facing more and more complex and demanding emergencies, and that the government wide spending reductions could create capacity, operation, and service delivery challenges for them. That's from their own report. And that's not the only department involved. While public safety helps to coordinate the federal response when a wildfire becomes a major emergency, it's actually Natural Resources Canada, or NRCan for short, that helps Canada to understand, predict, and prepare for wildfire risk. Now, this year, NRCan plans about $266 million in cuts, rising to $558 million by 2028. This is alongside approximately 807 fewer positions under the government spending review. While we can't say exactly where these cuts are in relation to wildfire management, the Public Service Alliance of Canada says that they've seen about a 50% reduction, equivalent to 60 people, in employees in the Government Operations Centre in Ottawa. However, the Office of Emergency Preparedness Minister says that this is inaccurate and that there has only been about a 10% reduction, and they claim that the Operations Centre continues to operate at full capacity. What we do know is that there is a further decline in wildfire-related capacity as several major investments in this area also come to their natural end. There are also reports that employees working on satellite wildfire mapping have received workforce adjustment notices, although the government has not broken down those cuts enough for us to verify exactly how many wildfire science positions are actually being eliminated at this time. Now, don't get me wrong, responses to wildfires are incredibly complex, and the federal government is really just one player. The actual fire responses are led by provincial and territorial governments and then the local authorities. These are the ones who are dispatching crews, making crucial decisions on which fires to put out and when, and placing evacuation orders. But when a province or territory becomes overwhelmed, they then call Ottawa for help, and it's public safety that answers and coordinates the federal assistance process. We just recently saw this happen with the BC wildfires on Sunday. Now, there's something interesting to digest here. So, recently, the federal government also invested heavily in wildfire response. This included more than $257 million for provincial and territorial aerial fighting capacity, essentially a bunch of new planes to tackle the fires. These are so important, and it's really, really needed. But water bombers are only one part of the system. We also need the scientists behind the scenes studying the fire's behavior. We need people mapping and understanding risk, and we need prevention. In particular, when we have Alberta, BC, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Ontario all simultaneously dealing with major fires at the same time, we need some people to help coordinate those resources. And we need enough people left in the system to respond when something goes seriously wrong. So the question I'm interested in, are we investing in the visible frontline response while quietly reducing some of the science, prevention, and coordination behind it? And as wildfire season becomes harder to manage, how much capacity can we afford to lose? That's what I'm going to keep digging into throughout this series. Because every time I see another announcement that says a department is cutting hundreds of positions, I want to know, what jobs are we losing? What did we rely on them for? And what happens when they're gone?